Hey everybody, here we are with a brand new episode of our Thrive Today podcast. We're switching seats, Natalie and I, and this morning I get to interview you because we're talking about something that I think many of you're going to be not just intrigued by it, but what we want to do is help solve problems, and we are going to help you with maybe some frustration that you may experience around the topic of innovation. So we're thrilled to have you for our Thrive Today podcast. We are a wonderful community of women leaders across the world who are women of faith, who have influence, and who are interested in growing in their leadership prowess. And we are here to serve that very thing. So let's jump into our conversation today, Natalie. Yeah. So the title of this article is Innovation Strong. How do we get there? Mm-hmm. And I love how you begin this, and you're going to take us to this point at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And you share a very interesting story about a personal playbook. Yes. And sometimes we can just feel so out of sync with what's going on. So share with us that and how it helped your success journey to figure this out. And one of the things that I think you landed on, we need to find as our beginning point, and that is that innovation is not something that's reserved for a select few.
That's right.
So talk to us about this.
Yeah. Well, when you think about innovation, right, we always think about Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. We think about these just great minds that created such incredible things, and then we kind of just count ourselves out. But speaking of playbooks, I can remember when I was in high school, I loved genetics. I actually thought that I was going to go on to become a world-renowned geneticist. And then I hit AP Bio, and everyone in AP Bio had actually studied AP Chemistry together the semester before. So I realized that they kept referring everything back to AP Chemistry, and I was like, oh my goodness, I think I'm going to fail this class. And it was by the grace of God and the kindness of my teacher that she decided to pass me, because I showed up every day and just tried, It was one of those I'm just trying here. And it became this understanding that sometimes in life people have a playbook and it can feel like we don't have access to it. And that can be true with innovation as well. And so I think when people hear that word, they just count themselves out and they're like, well, I'm not innovative or I'm not creative. What are all the things that we say when we're counting ourselves out? And so one of the things that I love to talk about is how we can build everyday innovators, because I do believe that in whatever facet of society we are in, whatever role we're in, whatever job we do, we have the ability to innovate. Innovation is in us. And so that is kind of the premise of where I start. And one of the first things that I think unlocks innovation is curiosity. Just the ability to be curious and really just ask great questions, think about the world around you, and just cultivate that curiosity in others as well.
I love that, because curiosity takes the limits off. Yeah. We have self-imposed limits, particularly around, we tend to put ourselves in categories. Mm-hmm. We get frustrated when other people do it to us, but we tend to do it to ourselves.
That's right.
One of the things that I hear over and over again is, well, I'm not creative. Well, if you're a mathematician, your creative genius is just different.
Yes.
So you are creative. So I love the idea of, instead of counting or disqualifying ourselves, how do we fit in? And curiosity helps us do that.
Yeah.
And so you make a really powerful statement that innovation, like you said, it's in us. Mm-hmm. It's something that is given, like it's been planted in our very DNA by our Heavenly Father. So it requires us to have a paradigm shift about this. So how does viewing creativity and innovation through the lens of faith, how does that change the way we approach the problem of solving innovation and leadership?
Yeah. So if we can agree not to count ourselves out, I think the next step is to think about the fact that we are created in God's image. And so that's, if we look at from the beginning of the time, when he created Adam, he said he created Adam in his image. So if Adam is created in God's image, so are we. So if innovation and creativity is in God, which we absolutely know it is, I mean, just look around, then obviously that is in us. And so the biggest thing is, once we can agree with that premise, then the next step is to understand that we have to cultivate any skill that we want in our life. So we have to actually become a steward of innovation. We have to actually bring that into the realm of being curious, of trying new things, of being willing to fail, which can be a little scary sometimes. But creativity and innovation belongs to everyone. It's not a select group of people that have this skill set. It exists in each and every one of us. And a lot of times we don't tap into that because we don't even believe that we're able to. And I think that's kind of the premise there with how God created us in the first place.
So that's the first hurdle.
Yeah.
And there are other hurdles along the way. And so you've already alluded to it. So one of the first areas that you talk about, in fact, is how healthy teams, they create healthy results. So in order for us to have a healthy area where there is great space for innovation and exploration, then we have to remove something that's in the way.
Yes.
And oftentimes it's this creating a psychological safety net for people. And so what we're saying there is creating comfort with conflict, with mistakes, with the freedom to breathe, and not constraining people by perfection. So talk about this a little bit, because I think this is huge for us.
Okay, so let's first maybe start by getting on the same page with what the definition of psychological safety is. I'm going to read it to us. People will not share ideas if they believe that they will be criticized, ignored, or punished for speaking up. So that's the first thing. So the question is, what is the temperature like on the team when someone has an idea? Does it immediately get shot down? Do people laugh at the idea? The leader honestly sets the tone for this. So it's however the leader receives input and receives ideas will be the tone that's set. So if the leader is curious, the organization will become curious. If the leader shuts ideas down, the organization will shut ideas down. And there's nothing worse than saying, well, we can't do that because so-and-so said 12 years ago they don't like this. And now that becomes a law and a rule in the land. And so what we have to realize is that we all are in charge of creating psychological safety when someone shares an idea. How we decide to respond to that says everything. So that's the first thing. If psychological safety is there, what you'll find is people are willing to share ideas instead of hold them to the chest. They are actually willing to go out on a limb and try new things that may or may not work. And they're willing to really bring others into their idea. Because that's one of the things that people do when they're not psychologically safe. They actually hoard their ideas and they keep their ideas to themselves. So you can kind of get in an environment, you can see how people interact, and within probably 15 to 20 minutes, you can start to see if that team is psychologically safe just based on how they're interacting with one another.
Well, and that's huge. I love that. And I want to bring in a nuance, because you and I both led the same creative team at Victory for many years. And one of the things that it's a little different as you're leading this team, because not every idea that gets expressed is going to be used.
Sure.
And some of them are not the greatest. But I think as a leader, I had to learn, okay, don't just shut this down, ask questions. Because when you begin to ask questions, you're drawing the person out, you're forcing them to think through the process strategically. Yeah. And maybe they are one of those types that share at first, think later. So you're going to help them to think better.
Yeah.
So it's the idea, even if it's not in its best form, is the opportunity for us to teach people how to ideate.
Yes.
On the fly.
Yes.
And so this is one of the things that I tried to do with the team. And I think it requires us to all not, when we put our idea on the table, our feelings don't go with it.
Yeah. You can't call it your precious once it's out there. It can't be my precious. My precious.
Yeah. Well, let's leave that line for this movie.
That's right. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think what you're saying is really important. Part of a leader's job, like you said, is to teach their team how to critically think through the ideas that they're bringing to the table. And so something that we would do a lot, and it's just something I enjoyed doing, was cultivating a bunch of ideas. Because once you have a lot of ideas, then it can't be my precious, right? If I'm only looking at 3 ideas, I'm like, that one's mine, it better make it. But if I'm just cranking out as many ideas as I can, then I kind of release some of those ideas. And I might still have a favorite, but there's so much going on that you're like, okay, those are everything. And then we start to narrow, and then we start to group like ideas together, and then we start to narrow it down and decide. And I think that that helps us to kind of figure out how to collaborate with one another in a way where it's not I'm fighting for my idea, you're fighting for yours, and I better win, because that's uncomfortable and that does not create that psychological safety we want.
Exactly. And that is a huge hurdle that people try to get over. And I think in the process of that is understanding, yes, you're creating safety and you can have a place that's safe, but it's also productive.
Yeah.
So you're creating this flow. You are stewarding the ideas in the room. Mm-hmm. You're capturing them. You're not making any promises, but you're starting the flow.
Yes.
And so rather than just putting all these constraints around that. Mm-hmm. Now, in order for that to happen, one of the things I've learned is who's gathered in the room. Mm-hmm. You know, because depending on the way we think and process, I think it's important to get the right people in the room at the right time. That's a whole other direction, and maybe that's a whole other podcast. But I think it's important for us to take all of this into consideration, because what we're trying to do is tee people up for success.
Yes.
And for great results. And so let's go back to this idea of the psychological safety.
Yeah.
I love this. I'm going to quote you because you highlight the concept of fail fast, fail cheap, and fail often.
Yeah.
That means we got to be willing to be uncomfortable. So how can leaders shift their culture so failure becomes a learning tool? Like, we can embrace it instead of fearing it. We can let it work for us.
Yeah. So I want to first differentiate failure and mistakes. Mistakes are things that I've messed up over and over again, even though someone has told me not to do it that way, and I haven't learned from it, and I keep making the same mistake over and over again. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about failure, which is trying something you've never tried before, and you have no idea what's going to happen on the other side of it. And this is a lot of what I would do in my career in product development. We would sit in a room, we would come up with a bunch of ideas, and we didn't know if those ideas were actually going to be successful or not. So what we would do is we would prototype a few of those ideas and we would take it out to the client. And we'd be so excited about some of these ideas and they would hate them. And so we would bring it back and we'd say, okay, let's see, do we need to toss it out completely, or do we need to evolve the idea into something that could be better? But part of the failure was going out in front of a client and hearing them say, that is a bad idea. And you're like, oh boy, okay, here we go. And you have to be able to take that back and turn that into something that is a good idea. And that to me is when we fail fast, cheap, and small. We did not spend a lot of money for someone to tell us they hate it. A lot of times what I see with small business owners is they make this mistake all the time. They spend a year cultivating this idea that no one likes. And now they not only have they spent all their life savings on it, and not only have they spent so much time on it, but then it gets out to market and nobody wants it. And so if we can sit across from someone and sketch it and tell them what it's supposed to do, and they can give us that feedback and say, no, I wouldn't use it that way, here's how I would use it, we just saved ourselves so much time, so much money, and so much heartache. So that's what I mean by fail fast, fail cheap, and fail often, is that we have to get our ideas out there early so that people can react to them and we can decide if we want to continue to invest in that idea.
Now, I'm hoping that all those people out there who are trying to innovate a new product, so all the entrepreneurs who are, I hope they're listening to you, because there's something that you said that's so key. We spend a lot of time cultivating the product. We need to be cultivating the relationship.
Yes.
Because we need to be willing and have the kind of relationships with clients, potential clients, where we say, hey, would you be willing to be a guinea pig? And most people are receptive to that.
Yeah.
And would you give me honest feedback? Mm-hmm. So there's a partnership there. And what they like about it is they get a say in the development of a product that not many people are inviting them into that room. They are a key part of the equation.
Yes.
So I think that as we are innovating our ideas, and before we go to market, there's another step, and you just nailed it. So I hope you guys got that. That's huge. You're going to save a lot of people a lot of heartache.
I hope so. I hope so. Because, you know, I'll often sit down with someone and my first question is, how long have you been working on this idea? And if they tell me a year or more, I kind of start to get a little worried for them because I know that they've been doing it in a silo.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes if we have a good idea and we can get it out there early and we can start to cultivate that relationship with that person and they'll help us build the thing that people will actually buy, we find that we can release it and get it out there faster than if we just hold it and keep babying it, and then it just grows and grows and grows, but maybe not in a direction that people are going to buy it.
Well, because and when something, especially if you're talking about developing something that's a long-term development of a product, everything about your client's needs could change.
Yes.
And so we're chasing the wrong thing. We want to be chasing the right thing. And I find that people like the idea of the freedom to be able to customize something for them.
Yes.
And isn't it true that the more customized things are these days, the more unique they are, and you stand out in the market, and the demand or the need is there for what you created. So all of this thought process, I think, is so worth us understanding where to invest our time, where to invest our dollars, and how to do it. So fantastic. All right. Question number 5, because you make a lot of powerful points in this article. I love it. You talk about perfection is the enemy of innovation. And I have learned this firsthand. I have made that mistake myself, taking so long to develop something because it's just not good enough. And we're on the wrong track when we think like that. So why do you think so many leaders struggle with this, with iteration, and how can we learn to actually move things along a little faster instead of sabotaging it by waiting for it to be perfect?
Well, let's get a little personal here, because I think we all do this when we're working on a project. We tie our personal identity to the project. So if the project's not perfect, then ultimately we think that we are going to fail, and therefore we call ourselves a failure. And we're not a failure just because maybe round 1 didn't work. In product development, a lot of times we will say, we need to be embarrassed by the very first thing that we put out. Like, it needs to be we need to be a little bit ashamed of it, because we are going to iterate so fast, because we are going to rapidly make it better. When we look at version 1 compared to version 7, we should feel a little ashamed, like, oh gosh, that was early. But we got it out there, we got feedback, and we built it really fast. And so that's, perfectionism slows us down. It slows down progress, and it doesn't allow us to release value to the people who need it the most. So that's part of the reason why we want to, release value as quickly as we can. We don't want to release it in a way where it's broken, but we should release enough value that somebody can use it, give us feedback, and then we can evolve and change it. And so I call that just iterating, right? Iterating along until you learn and then begin to grow what you're doing. So version 1, if we can think about it as imperfect, I can think about, and you're a writer too. So when I released my first book, it went out a little faster than I would have wanted it to. And as I was sitting there reading the first copy, I'm like, there's a mistake. 20 pages later, there's a mistake. And I found probably about 10 mistakes in the book. I bet there were more, but I found 10 of like, I wouldn't have liked that. But the alternative was continuing to edit it 3 years later. That would have been my alternative. Is just keep editing it, versus getting it out to the people who actually need it and can start to use it as a playbook. So I think in all of our lives, we have this little bent towards perfectionism because we want to put our best foot forward. But typically, once we get to about 90%, we need to just release it and call the 10% what it is.
Well, and you're talking about developing a new mindset shift, a new habit, because as I've learned in my own life, there's a difference between this level of scrutiny that strangles it.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between excellence and perfection. And I should be after excellence.
Yeah.
Is this the best I can do now? Perfection will never allow you to release it.
It's never enough.
It will never be. And so that black hole mentality is common in all of us.
Yeah.
Especially people who are high achievers, people who want to put something out there. So what do we say to the person right now who's listening to this? And I think we've just prodded her a little bit. And that's a good thing. Because she has something. How do we help her? What else can you say in the moment here to her to help her to take this and actually move forward with it?
Yeah. So in my world, the world that I spend a lot of time in, speed matters. And so, you know, it's what is, I'm going to quote probably very poorly General Patton, right? He says, a good idea violently executed today is better than a great idea executed next week. So like a lot of what we're after is speed. So like speed to market, not messy speed, but focused speed to market is much better than holding something until it's perfect. And then you're asking yourself 2 years later, what if I had released that? What if I had met that moment where I felt that I was supposed to release it, but I didn't because I was so focused on that perfectionism that it actually stood in the way of me being able to release what I needed to get out there to the world. And so that is key. Speed matters, and none of us are perfect. So if, you know, a lot of times we're over-analyzing ourselves, we're over-analyzing our work. And so what I would recommend to you if you're feeling that way is share it with, you know, 3 or 4 people and ask them their opinion. Do you feel like this is ready for release, or are there other areas I should continue to focus on? And if most people tell you it's ready, guess what? It's probably ready.
That's excellent advice, because speed to market is a real thing, and we need to allow that to be elevated, because how many times has somebody beat us to market with something because we were caught in the trap of perfectionism?
Yes.
So it speaks again to relationships. You need to have a circle around you of people that you can trust, who will give you honest feedback and who will help you to be able to have the courage to take that next step.
That's right.
And get that thing out there. Okay, you hear me? Somebody's waiting on what you have. So this has been awesome.
It's been so fun.
I love you are a deep well, and this has been fantastic. And I believe this is going to be very beneficial.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for switching seats. I was just looking at it, and I'm like, we have interviewed over 100+ leaders on this platform. Wow. So it's just incredible to think about the information that's getting into the hands of all of our Thrive Tribe. And so we want you to check out our community. We want you to head over to thrivetoday.com to learn more about us. You will see that we have a wealth of knowledge at your fingertips at Thrive Today. Coaching calls, we have quarterly boxes that come straight to your door, and so many more things for you to grab a hold of. So ladies, we are so excited to see you on the next episode. And until that time, don't forget to thrive. We'll see you next time.